14 things you know about cowboys that are totally wrong. Cowboys have been an iconic symbol of the American Wild West, immortalized in countless movies, novels, and songs. However, the common portrayal of these rugged individuals is often far from reality. From their attire to their actions, many aspects of cowboy life have been romanticized or misunderstood. Here are 14 shocking and scandalous misconceptions about cowboys that might just change how you picture these frontier figures. Number 1. The evolution of cowboy hats. Originally, cowboys wore bowler hats, which were imported from England and preferred for their durability. It wasn't until 1865, when John B. Stetson crafted the Boss of the Plains hat, designed specifically for the demands of the western frontier, that the Stetson became popular. This hat featured a high crown and wide brim, providing essential protection against sun and rain. It was first sold for $5, a significant sum at that time, and quickly became a status symbol among cowboys. Number 2. The diverse heritage of cowboys. Cowboys were a racially and ethnically diverse group. Historical census records and payroll books from large ranches like the King Ranch in Texas show that up to 25% of cowboys were African American in the late 19th century, and around 15% were of Mexican descent. The vaquero tradition, predating and influencing the cowboy culture, was brought by Mexican cattle herders. This diversity is crucial but often glossed over in traditional cowboy narratives, which predominantly feature white cowboys. Number 3. Cowboys and Brothels. The relationship between cowboys and brothels was complex and shaped by economic realities. Ledger books from establishments in Dodge City from the 1870s show that cowboys often spent a significant portion of their earnings during their infrequent town visits. For instance, a typical brothel visit could cost a cowboy $3, which was a considerable expense considering their modest wages. Historical records from the era suggest that these visits were sometimes seen as rare indulgences during the brief periods when cowboys were off the trail and in town. Number 4. The reality of gunfights. Gunfights among cowboys were rare and not as theatrical as depicted in films. One of the most cited examples, the gunfight at the OK Corral in 1881, involved lawmen more than cowboys and lasted only 30 seconds, but it became legendary due to its portrayal in film and literature. Regular cowboys seldom participated in such shootouts, with most using their guns for utilitarian purposes like protection from predators or hunting. Number 5. Cowgirls, women of the Wild West. Sally Skull was known not only for her sharpshooting and horse riding skills but also for her fierce independence and participation in cattle trades, a rarity for women in the 19th century. Operating in Texas, Skull managed her own herds and conducted business directly with buyers, challenging gender norms of the time. Her prowess and autonomy made her a legendary figure in Texas folklore. Annie Oakley, another iconic figure, showcased her exceptional shooting skills in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show starting in 1885. She was so skilled that she was often billed as Little Sure Shot, and her ability to split a playing card, edge-on, at 30 paces helped cement her status as one of America's first female superstars. Oakley's performances not only entertained millions but also challenged the contemporary stereotypes about the capabilities of women, advocating for women's rights to participate in shooting sports and other activities typically reserved for men. Number 6. The geographic limits of cowboys. While cowboys often traveled extensive trails, like the famous Chisholm Trail inaugurated in 1867, their movement wasn't as free as many believe. Land disputes, barbed wire laws starting in the 1870s, and the Enclosure Acts greatly restricted the open ranges traditionally used for cattle grazing by the early 20th century. These legal boundaries shaped the day-to-day activities and routes of cowboys, confining their once vast roaming territories. Number 7. Cowboys, heroes or outlaws. Billy the Kid, born Henry McCarty, is a prime example of the blurred lines between heroism and lawlessness in the Wild West. Starting as a ranch hand, Billy became infamous during the Lincoln County War, 1878 to 1881, where he was involved in cattle rustling and murders. His life, which ended when he was shot by Sheriff Pat Garrett in 1881, reflects the volatile nature of the West, where personal survival often led to acts that were on the wrong side of the law. This complexity makes figures like Billy the Kid both vilified and romanticized in cowboy lore. Number 8. The reality of cowboy wealth. The economic conditions for cowboys were generally harsh. Payroll records from the 1880s indicate that the average cowboy earned between $30 to $40 per month, with no benefits or security. Additionally, the work was seasonal, leaving many cowboys unemployed during off-seasons. Ranch owners and investors, in contrast, reaped significant profits from the booming cattle industry, highlighting the economic disparities of the time. Number 9. The short-lived cowboy era. The era of the traditional cowboy, while iconic, was brief, spanning from the end of the Civil War in 1865 to around the turn of the 20th century. The completion of major railroad lines, such as the Transcontinental Railroad in 1869, dramatically reduced the need for long cattle drives, changing the nature of ranching. The introduction of barbed wire in the late 1870s further restricted the open range, leading to more fenced-in properties and managed grazing. The U.S. Census Bureau's announcement in 1890 that the frontier was closed marked a symbolic end to this era, reflecting the significant changes in the American landscape and economy. Number 10. Cowboys often engaged in same-sex relationships. Historical documents, such as letters and diaries from the late 19th century, occasionally reference intimate relationships between men in the isolated settings of the American West. For instance, in a collection of letters from a cowboy in Wyoming around 1890, references to a special companion suggest more than just platonic companionship. Such relationships, often termed bachelor marriages in scholarly works, provided emotional and physical companionship on long, lonely trails. These insights challenge the stereotypical portrayal of cowboys as exclusively heterosexual and highlight the diversity of human relationships in any societal context. Number 11. Cowboys rarely fought Native Americans. Popular media often dramatizes conflicts between cowboys and Native Americans, but historical accounts suggest that such encounters were not as common as depicted. For example, the Journal of Charles Goodnight, a prominent cattle rancher of the time, mentions cooperation between his cowboys and the Comanche tribe in the 1870s, involving shared techniques in tracking and cattle management. This cooperation indicates a mutual respect and necessity for peaceful coexistence, contrary to the often sensationalized narratives of constant conflict. Number 12. Cowboys were often teenagers. Historical employment records, such as those from the XIT Ranch in Texas, show that in the 1880s, a significant number of cowboys were between the ages of 16 and 22. These young men often ventured into cowboy life seeking independence and economic opportunity, which was otherwise scarce in their original home settings. The 1885 payroll from XIT Ranch lists several teenagers, including a 15-year-old named James Polk, who worked as a line rider for $30 a month. Number 13. Cowboys and Alcohol, not as wild as you think. While alcohol was present in cowboy life, its use was regulated, and excessive drinking was frowned upon during work periods. Journals from cattle drives often mention dry periods where no alcohol was allowed, enforced to ensure safety and efficiency. After completing a cattle drive, cowboys might spend a portion of their earnings at saloons during short rest periods in towns. As noted in an 1884 newspaper from Cheyenne, Wyoming, cowboys were welcomed for their business but also closely watched by local law enforcement to prevent disorder. Number 14. Cowboys were not always gunslingers. Contrary to the popular image of cowboys as ever-ready sharpshooters, historical records indicate that firearms were less common and typically used for specific purposes. A study of property records from Dodge City in 1873 revealed that only about 1 in 3 cowboys owned a pistol, and those who did primarily used them for protection against wildlife or for slaughtering animals for food. Moreover, town ordinances such as those in Tombstone, 1881, required firearms to be deposited at local sheriff's offices, which controlled the carrying of guns within town limits to prevent violence.